We've all been there, right? You get a sudden chill, a terrifying thought, or maybe you hear this absolutely soaring piece of music and boom, the hair on your arms is standing straight up. It's a completely universal human experience. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder why our bodies do this? It's a reaction older than civilization itself. So in this explainer, we're going to dive right in and unpack the hidden story of an ancient survival system that's hiding literally right under your skin.
And hey, if you've ever been confused by this, you're in great company. Even Charles Darwin, the literal father of evolutionary theory, was totally baffled by this biological leftover. In his writings, he mused about this, wondering why in the world humans kept this reaction even after losing the thick fur coats of our ancestors. I mean, for a creature covered in dense fur, goosebumps make perfect sense, right? But for us, it kind of just seemed like a biological mistake.
So we really have to frame this as an unsolved biological puzzle. Just think about it. If we don't have enough hair to actually keep us warm or, make us look super intimidating, what on earth is the modern-day purpose of this reaction? Why didn't this trait just fade away millions of years ago as we evolved into having relatively bare skin? Well, to crack this case, we have to look incredibly close at our own biology.
Let's start by zooming in under the microscope. Deep down in the dermis layer of your skin, right at the base of your hair follicles, is this tiny little physiological engine. It's called the erector pili muscle. It's essentially a tiny bundle of smooth muscle fibers. And when this tiny muscle involuntarily contracts, it yanks on the hair follicle, pulling the hair shaft completely straight. At the very same time, it makes the surrounding skin bunch up, which creates those familiar little bumps on the surface.
Now, what sets this off is a biological chain reaction that happens in a fraction of a second. It actually starts in your brain, specifically the amygdala, when it detects a threat or maybe a sudden drop in temperature. Your brain immediately fires off an urgent message, kicking your sympathetic nervous system into high gear. This dumps adrenaline straight into your bloodstream, which races down to those tiny erector pili muscles, commanding them to contract right that second.
For our incredibly hairy ancestors, this rapid, involuntary response was the ultimate fight-or-flight survival kit. If they were freezing, raising all that thick fur trapped a nice layer of air against the skin, acting as this vital thermal insulation. On the flip side, if they were cornered by a predator, making all their hair stand on end made them look massively larger and way more intimidating. It was literally a matter of life or death. Basically a built-in puff jacket and a threat display rolled into one.
And we actually see this exact same survival mechanism playing out across the animal kingdom today. If you've ever seen a spooked cat or a dog that just heard a weird noise in the dark, you've seen the hair, the hackles on their back rise up. Chimpanzees and macaques do this when they're charging a rival. Even porcupines use a variation of this exact muscle to flare their quills. It's a deeply ingrained mechanism for dealing with environmental stress and danger.
So here is the big aha moment when it comes to animal biology. Regulating body temperature is incredibly expensive when it comes to energy. Generating heat, like when you shiver and your muscles are rapidly firing, costs your body massive amounts of metabolic energy. In fact, shivering has only about a 10% efficiency rate. That makes the simple act of raising your fur to trap heat a vital, energy-saving first line of defense. Your body wants to conserve energy at absolutely all costs, following a rule scientists call the economy of action.
But here is where things get really fascinating for us humans. Think about your absolute favorite movie soundtrack. We don't just get goosebumps from the freezing cold or a physical threat, right? We also experience this psychological ghost called frisson, or aesthetic chills. It's a psychophysiological response to highly rewarding, non-threatening stimuli. It hits you when you listen to sweeping, emotional music, or stand in front of a beautiful piece of art, or even when you hear an incredibly eloquent speech.
But why on earth does art trigger a survival response? Well, it's because our brains process intense emotions, shock, and deep pleasure through the exact same neural pathways as physical threats. When a piece of music modulates unexpectedly, your brain's amygdala essentially panics and dispatches a threat signal. Your sympathetic nervous system gets completely hijacked by the art, dumping adrenaline into your body. A split second later, your higher brain is like, oh, wait, there's no actual danger here, leaving you with just a lingering wave of pleasure and, of course, raised arm hair.
Scientists who study the concept of awe have actually categorized these human chills into two very distinct camps. On one side, we have positive, warm goose tingles. These are associated with awe, joy, and this pro-social feeling of connectedness to other people. But on the other side, we have the harsh cold shivers, which are tied to negative states, fear, the cold, and a feeling of isolation or defense.
Our bodies are using the exact same physical muscle contraction to communicate vastly different emotional states. How wild is that?
Now, what's really interesting is that this reflex isn't completely involuntary for absolutely everyone. Believe it or not, a very small, remarkably rare percentage of humans can actually trigger these goosebumps completely on command. This totally puzzles researchers because the autonomic nervous system shouldn't be under our conscious control. Yet just like some birds can purposefully raise their feathers for courtship rituals, some humans somehow still possess a vestigial ability to consciously flex this ancient system.
But this brings us right back to our central mystery, the very one that stumped Charles Darwin. If this reflex is just a useless evolutionary hangover for us hairless humans, I mean, if our tiny hairs don't actually trap enough air to keep us warm, and they certainly don't make us look big enough to scare off a predator, why didn't we just lose this trait over millions of years of evolution?
Well, for decades, science really didn't have a good answer. But recently, a team of researchers at Harvard University decided to peer deep into the skin under an extremely high-resolution electron microscope. And what they discovered was a massive plot twist. It turns out the cell types that cause goosebumps have a totally secret secondary job that literally no one saw coming.
They uncovered this brilliant, hidden biological triad. They found that the sympathetic nerve actually wraps tightly around hair follicle stem cells almost like a ribbon. But it desperately needs structural support to maintain that connection. And as it turns out, that little erector pili muscle isn't just a motor. It acts as a physical bridge holding the nerve and the stem cell together. When the nerve fires, it shoots chemicals across that bridge, telling the stem cells to wake up and get to work.
This reveals a genius, two-layer response to our environment. In the short term, a sudden chill gives you goosebumps for immediate minor relief. But in the long term, if that cold is sustained, the heightened nerve activity uses that muscle bridge to relentlessly signal your stem cells. And the ultimate goal of all that signaling? To wake those stem cells up and trigger the growth of a brand new, thicker coat of hair.
So the real reason we haven't evolved out of goosebumps is that the muscle responsible for them is a vital piece of biological scaffolding. If you were to take away the erector pili muscle, the sympathetic nerve actually retracts, and the connection to the stem cells is completely lost. Because this ancient nervous system response is so directly tied to tissue regeneration and hair growth, humans are likely going to keep this reflex forever. We literally need it.
So it leaves us with this incredible and honestly somewhat hilarious thought. Goosebumps aren't just some glitch or a useless leftover from our caveman days. They are a beautifully complex system linking our environment, our emotions, and our body's ability to regenerate. It means that every single time you get the chills from an emotional movie, an awe-inspiring view, or a beautiful song, your body's survival system is secretly revving up an ancient mechanism genuinely trying to grow you a winter coat.